want to talk to you today about how women suffer under the current system. The thing that strikes me about marriage is that it doesn't do what it says on the tin. Everybody who's been talking tonight has been talking about love and fidelity and support and how everybody's got the right feelings and blah, blah, blah. 42% of our marriages will end in divorce. Is there more happiness at the marriage end before there is misery and hardship at the divorce end? I don't know, but it seems to me that a system that can be relied upon to fail nearly half of the time is a pretty rotten system. And the curious thing is, of course, that in the marriage ceremony we make vows till death do us part that we don't mean. The vows are bullshit. I mean, half of those marriages almost will end in divorce, and some very quickly. We've talked about marriage as a way of supporting children. Are we joking? Are we joking? We absolutely cannot get child support. We can chase people for everything else. They can chase you for a parking fine. They can chase you for unpaid council tax, but they can't get the non-resident parent, who is nearly always male. Isn't it curious? There is such a heterosexual cast to the whole ceremony. We might say the family is no longer patriarchal. Please. Of course it is. Of course. We understand we have 2 women a week killed by their partner. Were they married or unmarried? Who cares? Basically, the system is the same. The system is a hammer and anvil system, and women are caught up in that system. You know, isn't it extraordinary that it's girls who want to get married? It's girls who think with stars in their eyes they want to get married, and yet 66% of the divorces that occur in the UK are initiated by women. What do you think that means? That means that the women who had the ideal of what being a wife was going to be have found that it was something they couldn't even live with. And do you know what it means to be a divorced woman in our country? Do you know what it means to become instantly a single parent? Children under 16 are involved in almost half of all our divorces. Most of those women who try to get out of a marriage also know that they're going to be single parents. And they know what that means. That means they slide straight down the economic ladder. That means they become poor. That means that their employment prospects are different.
Are people more likely to become single parents if they are married or if they are not married?
Well, excuse me, if a woman chooses to be a single parent, that's one thing.
Sorry, if we have the institution of marriage, are we likely to have more or less single parents?
Why would the answer to that question be important? Marriage is supposed to make sure that you don't have single parents. That's the whole idea.
Because you just told me single parents were bad. So if you can't...
I didn't tell you that.
Sorry.
Can you believe how people cannot hear what I say? Did anybody hear me say single parents were bad? Am I speaking a foreign tongue? I don't think single parents are bad. What I'm trying to tell you is this, that the life of a single parent is really, really tough. When you look at a woman who could maybe bear staying in a relationship, keep her family together, live under one roof, not go into poverty, not be solely responsible for the health and welfare of her children, especially seeing as she can't get any damn maintenance. When she chooses to leave a marriage, she's taken a huge decision. She is telling you something about that institution. Now, you may say it would be the same in any arrangement, in any agreement that she came to about how she was going to live with somebody and how she was going to bear children and bring them up. But I don't think that's true at all. We've been drawing a parallel between civil partnerships and marriage as if they were the same. There's a number of aspects in which they're not the same at all. One of them is, for example, that sex is not necessary in a civil partnership. No one's going to tell you what you've got to do with your bits. But in marriage, they do. If it's not consummated, a marriage is null. No one has ever said that about a civil partnership. Civil partnerships exist in Europe, and it's really interesting that 95% of the people joining up in civil partnerships in Holland, pretty smart country, taught us most of what we know about ships and gardening. Well, it looks as if they know something about marriage as well. 95% of people in Holland, heterosexual people, entering into civil partnership. In this country, heterosexual people are not eligible for civil partnership. Now, this is a pretty good example of total confusion. And this is our problem with marriage. It's a mess. It's a mess from understanding what is supposed to be done in the religious ceremony and understanding how that affects the relationship and the deal. It's supposed to be a contract. I mean, what a ridiculous contract. It's got no clauses. You've got no idea what you're supposed to do. Am I supposed to clean the toilet, or does he get to do it once in a while? None of that is there. There's nothing that tells you what your duties are. There's nothing that tells you beyond notionally of how you will actually manage that interaction. A mortgage makes more sense than a marriage. And more people will be faithful to a mortgage than will be faithful to a marriage. Why? Because the terms are pretty clear and you know what the deal is. And besides, buying out your partner is just a bit too hard. Okay, so what I'm trying to get you to see is, in the period I know most about, in the 16th and 17th centuries, there were two sides to a marriage. There was the settlement. That was where the bride and groom's families sat down and thrashed out what would happen, who owned what, who was responsible for what would happen if one partner or the other died, whether heirs of the body would inherit, and so forth. This was absolutely hard-headed dealing. We don't do that. We go into a marriage with all these notions about how it's about love and about commitment and so on, all wonderful then and there, but all very difficult to make happen, especially if you don't understand each other very well. Being in love is a pretty rotten idea. I mean, a pretty rotten reason for doing anything. You're out of your mind, you know that, you're obsessed. Whatever you do, don't get married. But you probably will. So what I'm trying to say to you here is that we've got to think now about the families of the future. We are watching extraordinary things happen to families now. Motherhood has been split in three, between genetic motherhood, uterine motherhood, and legal motherhood. Whoever knew this was going to happen? We've watched to see the injustice that is meted out to women who enter into surrogacy agreements because they're poor, and who then find that the child has been dumped because it's considered not good enough, as happened in a famous case involving my countrymen in India. We now see that families have got to be rebuilt. Now, a family, you know, is not your descendants. A family is your household. Now, lots of you, you're a bit young, I can see, but many of you will have watched Friends, which was all about being an age set, living together, being committed to each other. It's your job now to rescue the family, and you can't do it through this old, confused, muddled up, pseudo-religious recipe. It isn't going to work for you. You're going to end up like those women struggling, the women who write to me every day, the women who come and hear me when I speak. These are my people, these are the people I care about, these are the people I would want to represent. I want you to think about whether marriage is bearable given the measure of human suffering that it has already brought upon the women of the country you were born in.